Life as Ceremony shares personal stories, interviews with inspirational souls, and practical wisdom to help you reconnect with yourself and spirituality. Welcome back to another episode of Life as Ceremony. Today we have Mik Gerylo joining us. He is an athlete, a 3 times Canadian Spartan Race Series winner, and a phys ed teacher. Thanks for joining us, Mik.
Thanks for having me.
Before we talk about personal growth, values, sacrifice, and the connections between spirituality and ceremony and being an athlete, I would love to put you through some rapid fire questions that I have not
This,
given you ahead of time. Is that okay?
this might be my favorite part I'm looking forward to, so let's do it.
Okay. Sunrise or sunset?
Sunrise, please.
Yeah. Where
Uh,
is your favorite place to experience a sunrise?
I think I think the best place is not the issue, it's the best people, or in terms of making a personal decision to get up before it and then experiencing whatever you're doing with the sunrise. So um, I'll always take a mountain landscape. I'll always take outdoors. But definitely I've had better experiences in terms of best days is when I am experiencing a sunrise.
Amazing. Awesome. Dogs or cats?
Definitely dogs.
Do you have a dog yet?
I grew up with dogs. I think since my parents retired and uh, they travel the world too much to need that responsibility now. But I grew up with basically Cocker Spaniel
Oh,
throughout my whole childhood and stuff. So I've always been a dog guy.
right on.
Plus, unless your cat can go for a jog with me, then I'm sticking with dogs.
Yes, I can imagine that for you. Dog is more fitting. Winning a championship or breaking a personal record?
Uh, Championship would be with a team.
I don't know.
Uh, let's say
Let's do
I feel
both.
like
Let's do both.
championships. Okay, I would rather win a championship with a team just because you always have that memory with, like, let's say 15 individuals or so, which would be amazing. Although I think as you get older, you start to really value personal bests because you're going against father time. And if you're still experiencing a personal best in anything, I think you need to appreciate that. So I will say if you're with a group, I'm kind of cheating on this one, but I'm
No.
giving both answers. So with a group, I'll pick championship. Individually, I'll pick personal best.
No, I'm glad you went into that because I think that's so true that as we get older, we are racing against father time and the only person out there we're trying to beat is ourselves and just how much, breaking that personal best really means as we get older, and the fact that we still can is like, wow, you know?
For
Yeah.
sure.
What's your favorite sport to watch?
Uh what is my favorite sport to watch? I really appreciate athletes from all realms. I
Mhm.
feel like when you've trained different athletes, when you've experienced multiple sports, uh, you really appreciate it. But I would say my favorite sport to watch is actually like adventure documentaries, like
Mm.
alpine athletes and or mountain bike films or something like that. Like really good cinematography and kind of a story behind it, and just usually have good music to it, and it's always a good vibe.
Okay, cool. Have you ever heard of the Banff Film Festival? This is
Of
not one of your
course,
rapid
yeah,
fire questions.
of
Okay,
course.
so Carson and I go to that every year and we love it. Like the story behind it and what people are doing and like the amazing footage is like, yeah, it's so incredible. I love doing that every year. So,
You always leave from those telling yourself like, I gotta go, I gotta just plan like a big weekend away or a big. It always motivates you to go do it and see. And I think sometimes you don't realize how tough some of those sports or adventures are, and yeah, they do a great job of it.
yeah, absolutely. I always leave feeling like so inspired, whether it's like with a fitness related goal or a travel related goal. Yes,
Yeah, I
absolutely.
would never I would never mountain bike in terms of extremes, but I
Right.
always love watching them. I don't know why. It's just it's very impressive. So
Sure.
Yeah, those are great. As long as they choose the right films. I think every province will have a night for it, and
Hmm.
it depends on who picks the films. I think they always have like 50 some films to choose from, and then whichever ones they choose. So
Yeah.
you may go to Banff Film Festival and we may watch
Totally different
some different.
videos.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't know that. Wow. Already learning so much.
There you
Okay.
go.
What is your favorite sport to play?
I think my favorite sport to play was definitely soccer in terms of just overall enjoyment and how competent I felt at it.
Hmm. Okay. Awesome. And what is your pre-race meal?
In terms of endurance, it's pretty simple. It's just banana, instant oatmeal, some some kind of date bar or dates, and bit of coffee and water. It's keep it simple.
Keep it
It
simple.
never did me wrong, so I'm not changing it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And then last one is, do you have a favorite quote? Any words to live by? Even something that just feels top of mind lately?
Yes, I feel like top of mind. Well, you didn't give me these
I didn't.
pre-interview, so you're putting me on the spot a little bit. But one of the big ones I'm working on with right now is so simple, but it's just if nothing changes, nothing changes. And I don't know why. It might be just where I have been, and certain things have been going well for me, but still, when things are going well, sometimes things don't change. So you just keep up with certain things, and I'm still trying to always improve. So that's a big one. And then my one tattoo I have on my body says "Find your why." So that is pretty much the number one quote for me always, and it means it has a match being lit beside it. So it always just simplify or symbolizes that if you have a strong enough why, you'll always find time and passion to put into things.
Yeah, I love that. I always think that when we explore our why, it connects us with purpose and it allows us to, put in the work on the days we don't feel motivated or inspired because we're connected to why we're doing it. Because we're not going to feel inspired or
100%.
motivated all the time. And yeah, cool. I didn't know you had a tattoo. That's awesome. Also, can I add? I'm going to add to your list of words to live by because you texted me one the other day, and I was like, I'm adding it to my list of words to live by. Do you remember what you said?
Yes. How you do one thing is how you do everything. I
Yes.
always tell my students that too, is if you have the right mindset or a philosophy for something, it's very easy to be successful in any situations as long as you understand how you do one thing is how you do everything. If you give yourself the out somewhere else, it'll filter out into other aspects of your life. So
Absolutely. Yeah, when you texted me that the other day, I was like, I want to do my own journaling session on that because, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And yeah, if someone ever asks me that question, I'll quote you and be like, well, I was having a
I don't think you might need to look up who actually had that quote, but
Yeah,
it's a good
okay.
one.
It is. Okay. So, what led you down this path of, becoming the athlete that you are today?
Well, I guess I growing up, I was kind of that very active child. Like I needed to, and we were kind of 90s kids, so you know how it was just outside playing and being active. And I jumped into lots of sports. My parents always just encouraged me to do everything, and I never really became specific at one thing. So it was nice, but I never also became like a one athlete kind of person and got opportunities from being kind of the best. So I would say I was always tier two athlete of like many different things, and but always needed to play sports that I sweat a lot in and moved a lot. So I think that promoted kind of where my next stages went after I tried everything. And I played things like water polo and volleyball back in high school, and then got opportunities to play university soccer. Kept up with snowboarding, still play hockey to this day. But again, just kind of multi sport. I played team handball, bunch of different things. And um, I think once those stopped after high school, and then once soccer stopped after university, first few years, I always still wanted to train like an athlete, and I didn't have that outlet. So, of course, what a lot of people do is they look at marathon running, road running, something like that. So I jumped into the Manitoba Half Marathon. Um, a lot of people can kind of feel like as you get older, you slightly have this urge to just sign up for something and do it. So that was probably me too, right? And I went and did it, and I did well. Like I've always been a good runner, and I've always enjoyed kind of that feeling of working really hard. That never was like a uncomfort to me as a child, and kind of so I loved leaning into things that made me feel like I was working hard and did well. But then after it, realized I don't just want to be like a road runner. I like lifting weights. I like training like an athlete, and not saying runners aren't athletes, because they're some of the most impressive athletes I know coming from multiple sports. It's also a nice thing where you learn to respect all different kinds of sports, whether you try it once or you play it for a season. I think when you see some of the best do it, you realize how good they really are. Whereas if you've never tried it, it might seem a little easier than you think, or whatever else. But then came Spartan Race. So ran my first half marathon, and then somehow just was looking online, and this obstacle racing came up, which was, people don't understand, it's kind of like mountain and trail running, with military and ninja warrior obstacles as you're running. So there's penalties to it. There's lots of different brands, but Spartan Race was kind of the elite kind of aspect to the sport. So I went and did my first one. I don't know, just booked a plane ticket, signed up for one out in Ottawa, and went and ran it. Had no idea what I was doing. I look at like the gear I was wearing, and you talk about even pre-race meal or something before, and uh, I had no concept of any. I didn't even know how to put a timing chip on my shoe. Like it was pretty funny, but went into it, and back then the sport was taking off, right? It was not only for elite athletes, it was just for people that wanted to take on a challenge and get through it and complete it. So it was kind of blowing up in two different ways, like in the competitive sports track, and then you had your regular athletes. But I did it and ended up coming third place. And I didn't really know who I was racing against. Didn't know that there was a Canadian team, like a national team to it, and sponsored athletes. And I finished, and they all know each other, right? Everyone in the sport
Mhm.
kind of knows each other, and so they were asking who I was, and
Like, who's this guy
um,
from Winnipeg?
yeah, they're just like, oh, I was like, oh, it's my first race. It was fun. Like, I think I beat the fourth place guy by 4 seconds. Like, it was so close, but
Wow.
third place means you end up on the podium. So there was a whole ceremony. I had got this giant check from, like, it wasn't a big amount of money, but it was the fact that you got this giant check, and you feel kind of embarrassed walking through the airport after it with like a giant check. Everyone's excited to see it, and then it's a check for $100. But um, it definitely added, to the fire of doing that. And then all of the athletes that I was competing against that day kind of encouraged me. They said, "Hey, if this was your first race, like, you got to do it again. There's a whole circuit around Canada. You can go to world championships." They were kind of explaining it. So that, and they got me into it. So that was my first introduction to Spartan Race. And I mean, if anyone's listening to this, it still is a great challenge, no matter who you are. And I always say, if you all you need to do is sign up for something that will take you out of your comfort zone, and you'll see all of your actions leading into it kind of help you, motivate you, make time to prepare. So sometimes you have to, you know, it's not ready, aim, fire. It's kind of fire, aim, ready kind of thing. So um, I did that, came back instantly, looked up other races, started to try to think about how I could actually train for this. Luckily, I was in decent shape from soccer and different things. So I had a good base for it, but there's a lot of specific training if you want to be the best for it. So um, that's
Like
how
what?
it's
Like
a
what?
it's a good mix of everything, right? You have to be a very good kind of terrain runner, let's
Mhm.
say mountain running, trail running, and then you have to be able to just carry heavy things on your back. You have to be able to crawl under things, jump over walls, climb up ropes, and then get your heart rate down to like throw a spear or do some more task based obstacles. And they always had penalties to them. So um, there was there was always an aspect of failure to penalty to kind of, if you have a weakness, that race will find it at
Mhm.
some point. So it was a good balance of kind of just throw all your skills and fitness on the table and then throw it in the race and see who ends up in the end. And what I loved about it is anything can happen, right? You could be in 10th place and all of a sudden pass five people doing their penalty. And it was really exciting. So that was 2014. So I've been doing this for a long time now.
Yeah.
And I've had so many experiences with it. I've went to world championships. I've traveled around the world. I ended up taking a year off of my career teaching phys ed and moving to New Zealand for half a year after I competed here. So it's given me many opportunities, and I've met kind of like-minded people, right? Which
Mhm.
always brings you sometimes, when you're training for stuff like this and no one understands it and everything, you feel like, why am I doing this? And so I always found when I went to these races, I would be more at peace with myself because I felt more understood. I felt like everyone
Mhm.
understood making time for fitness and training hard and trying to do your best. And then sometimes you'd come back and it'd be one of those things where you come back the next day and your weekend was just like the best thing in the world that you love, and you worked hard and you felt proud. It was kind of a celebration of all the work you put in. And then you came back and it was like, no one, like, you don't need people to understand you, but it's nice to be around people that understand you. Just like, let's say, people that do yoga or people that do
Mhm.
anything. I feel like you don't have there's these like unconscious things you don't even have to say to those people. When you know someone has played soccer before or done this, they just, you understand each other to a certain extent. So that brought me back many times. And um, yeah, and I was able to sign a few contracts, work with a few brands, and uh, kind of compete as a semi-professional athlete and
Mhm.
go around, which was exciting. It was nice to. It was a lot of pressure, and
Mhm.
um, it was not something that I would love to do kind of forever, but it was such a good experience. And like I said, then I could focus purely on that for a while, and that was a really cool thing.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks for sharing your journey and your story with us. You've been doing it for over a decade. What's been
Yes.
like from Mick, who signed up for that race, who didn't know how to put a chip on his shoelace, to now?
Hmm.
What's been like the greatest things you've learned about yourself through training for these kinds of races?
I think first of all, you realize that uh, you will always upperform if you sign up for things and do things that kind of you don't know if you're going to win or instantly be good at. And then I realized, like, things take 5 years. Like, I think anything you want to get really good at and learn lots of different things through trial and error, through stacking days of consistent work and whatever else, whether it's, you know, let's say your podcast, you like you're stacking days, same thing. And you will look back and see how all of this made you better for the next thing. And it just takes time. And
Mhm.
I think it's one of the best experiences to actually put 5 years into something to realize how good you can get at it if you
Mhm.
keep working and learning. And it's not about what your talent is. It's not about kind of different things like that. So that was probably the biggest thing. And I think now that I've also been teaching for 11 years now, so you relate that back to how you used to be, and you look back and you're like, I didn't know anything back then. I was just kind of winging it and going with it, and you just
Yeah.
slowly learn things, and you realize it's a pretty empowering thing when you can put a lot of time into it and keep learning and keep getting better. Plus, fitness doesn't have a ceiling. So there's always going to be someone better. There's always going to be someone new coming up. There's always going to be new challenges and stuff like that. So you're never at a point where you're just like, okay, I figured it out. Like now I can just sit back, right? Um, Plus, I've had to learn how to compete in something fitness wise while getting older, right? I was,
Mhm,
24 years old
mhm,
when I first did it, and now I'm 35. So
mhm.
uh, that's a little different now too. I didn't used to wake up and be like, what did I do yesterday? And I was pretty elastic, pretty, like you just take things for granted. And even
Totally.
though people tell you, everyone, wait till you get older or whatever else. But I'll never stop moving. So I'll just keep figuring it out.
Amazing. Yeah, it's so true when you're 20 and you're like well, yeah, your knees are maybe still made of rubber and you're just like, no, I'll be fine. And then
Yeah,
it doesn't, you don't believe it until it starts to happen to you. Until you're like, oh, like I sound like my parents. I'm like, oh, I need to, stretch when I first wake
for
up in the
sure.
morning.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think just pressure is like a privilege. Like you put yourself into that pressure.
Hmm.
Um, and understanding that you are not like judged off of one race or one result or one interview or one thing. It is just, if you're worried about that one mistake or one thing, and you kind of do put your cards all on the table, so you risk not doing well every time.
Hmm.
And then especially if you start doing well, then you start expecting, like, and other people start expecting. So unless you do well, people think something happened went wrong. But then you kind of realize everyone's kind of in their own world and it's not a big deal. They've already moved on from it. So it's been a lot of like self reflection and just understanding myself and understanding that it's good for me to challenge myself and have something to be constantly working towards. Um, I find like my life improves when I am working at something physically
Hmm.
because it's just you have to dedicate so much more around it that the rest of your life improves.
Hmm. Hmm. I just
Yeah,
want to touch on something you mentioned earlier about like fitness not having a ceiling and that we're not going to get to a place of like, oh, I've got it all figured out or like, oh, I've made it. And I feel like the same is so true about life. And that's why it's so
for
important
sure.
to reflect on like, what are we striving for or why are we striving? And it's not that we shouldn't work hard, but if we're working hard to reach some sort of end destination that we've made up in our mind to feel like we've made it or that we've figured it all out, we're never going to get there. And I think that it sounds like, yeah, that you believe that too. And so, which I'm sure you saw this question coming at some point, but what is your why?
I think it changes.
Yes.
I think at different chapters, and I have a why for many different kind of pillars of my life, and so certain things make sense to me all the time. Maybe
Mhm.
they're just uh, blanket kind of why reasons, whether it's with my family and friends or whatever else. But in terms of fitness, I find that my why was always the process, like enjoying the process of
Mhm.
getting to a race. And then, like you said, there's no destination. And then when you race, then all of a sudden it's not like you just stop,
Mhm.
right? I just want to stay in the process. I enjoy the process of getting there. And then the race is actually just a celebration
Mhm.
of kind of all the work you've put in. And sure, I learned when I was younger that I put a lot of pressure on myself to do well.
Mhm.
Um, and then I started realizing like this is not it's almost like a worst day for me and it
Mhm.
should be a celebration and stuff like that. But what is my why? Bringing this is you as an interviewer, and then the person goes off on a tangent, and then they remember what you asked. But
That's but
I'm bringing myself back. Okay, I'm bringing myself back. I think what is my why is always am I improving, and then what is my main reason why I'm doing it. And if it's not to improve myself and and or be better for other people around me that I can have an impact on, then I need to figure out a new why sometimes.
Mhm.
Like sometimes you think you know what your reason is you're doing something, and then you figure it out along the way, and it's not really the same reason, or your why changes.
Mhm.
And, now I'm less worried about the results. And
Mhm.
so my why is definitely just to continue to challenge myself because I like the state of mind that I am for everyone else when I am working towards things physically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Also, I love the tangents. I think that it actually plays into this idea of like the goal, like the gold is in the journey, the gold is in like what is it? It's like the winning is in the playing, like of the journey of it. And even within, a tangent or your answers, like I heard so much gold within that of like that is what did you say? And now I'm blanking. You said something really, really powerful that I was like, oh no, I absolutely love that. Like for you, it's about being in the process. And I think that
For
that's
sure.
like, I think the most simple things are the most profound. And I mean, that can also be part of a why as well, of like to just be in the process because what it teaches me about myself, what it teaches me about life, what it teaches me about, yeah.
Yeah. And when you have a strong enough why, the idea is you're never basing your decisions off of how you feel. You just know why you're doing something. And sometimes just putting action towards whether it's like if you're someone with kids or you're someone that has a career you care about or something like that, there's always going to be moments that you don't necessarily feel like it in the moment or something like that, but uh, it's the thing you have to do. And then you always are just able to get there when you kind of bring awareness back to it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's something I am getting better at as I get older is bringing myself back to awareness of kind of
Mhm.
why I'm doing things. Yeah.
And I'm curious if you want to touch on your why behind teaching. Like you are working with the next
Yes.
generation and yeah, I was curious if you want to
What
share.
a what a generation to be working with, eh?
Yeah.
It's you hear so many people complain, and I'm sure, every generation further complains about the generation coming up, right? There's just always those things. And
Mhm.
um I mean, I work with high school students right now, and I did work with kindergarten to grade 8, but now I work grade 9 to 12. Um, and I'm realizing that my main why in this is to try to get high school students to like it's taken me so many years to realize certain things about health and fitness and everything, and especially now with you know technology and all this. I know those are like blanket statements, but it really is becoming we are becoming more aware of how bad things are getting in terms of our mental state and our activity levels and our health and wellness in terms of our mental state. So uh, I really try to teach theory for phys ed, and I care about it in terms of, if you look at everything you have to teach, mental health, nutrition, positive relationships, everything is, I've really looked at that as my opportunity to really say something, because you never know when you're going to say something that one student goes home and actually creates action towards something you said. And you know, you can say as much as you want, and there's information everywhere.
Mhm.
So I don't think information is necessarily the most important thing. You can get information of how to have perfect nutrition, how to start meditating, how to
Mhm.
build a fitness plan, but it's actually putting time into it and understanding yourself and putting action. So I'm trying to learn from really good speakers of how to actually and which activities to get them to do that actually make like lifestyle changes, and then just getting them to appreciate physical activity in terms of, okay, it's okay that I'm bad at this, I should be bad at this, I barely work at it, and changing your mentality over, uh, I don't want to look bad, or I don't like feeling uncomfortable, instead of changing it to different things. So I think in terms of that, I really want to have an impact on students, and um, you also have to practice what you preach, because if students don't believe you believe in it and
Mhm,
you don't understand it, you're just saying stuff because it's what you have to teach. They will read into that 100%. So um, I know that I care about this stuff so much, and I'm
mhm.
constantly learning, um, and 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 learning new, like learning on new studies and new things like that. So I'm trying to really give them the most relevant things in terms of every pillar. So
Yeah.
right now, until I have my own kids, then these are students that I can have an impact on, and I try my best to give them the exposure they need.
Yeah, what I
Yeah,
hear in that is like you're helping shift their mindset to help them, create a more fulfilling life for themselves and other people. I think
definitely.
we do the work individually, it impacts everyone collectively. Just the way you spoke about, I think it's so true. I think in our world, we, want a lot of instant gratification, or if we're bad at something at first, we think it's not for us, versus leaning into discomfort and seeing it as an opportunity. So yeah, in all of that, I heard like you're actually, yes, you're teaching phys ed, and it encompasses so many different things and different pillars. But I think I don't, what
Yeah,
I
every
heard is,
activity,
yeah,
yeah,
go
every
ahead.
activity has like a life lesson to it, whether it's working as a team or looking, being okay to laugh at yourself or getting bad at something, or putting time in to improve at something, or actually understanding, like, neurologically why I am affected, like how dopamine works or how nutrition works in my body or how sleep affects blank, blank, blank. And so it is, there are so many things connected. And
Hmm.
if you can get them thinking in the right way, because if you're not thinking of the of anything, then you're kind of caught up in your own routines. And when you're caught in routines, being unaware, then you usually make the easy decision.
Hmm.
And in the moment, that's easy, but that compounds over years. And um, I always like showing like a graph of someone that makes multiple easy decisions in their day, and someone that
Hmm.
makes those small, more difficult, or just the quick changes, like putting a dish away or making your bed in the morning or choosing that healthy snack instead of whatever. And if those 10 little things in your day, which are just easier decisions to choose the little easier path, then over 5 years, time can either be your worst enemy or your best friend, right? So
Totally. I
yeah,
I literally think about that, like if I make my bed or put my dishes away, like how even before you shared those words to live by with me, like how you do one thing is how you do everything, and it translates into all these areas of life. And I mean that's part of also like life as ceremony. It's not about physically like doing anything different, but it's like about bringing awareness to the things we already do and
for
intention.
sure.
Hmm. Yeah.
I like, selfishly, it's nice to teach it. Some semesters I teach different classes, but within a few years, I usually am teaching somewhat of the same,
Hmm.
uh, topics. And it's reminders for me too, right? Like when you talk about it more and you teach it, it brings it back to what you need to do too. Because I, we will never have it completely figured out, right? And day to day,
100%.
it's always just a battle of trying to improve, trying to figure things out. And so you are kind of, um, you are a product of your most consistent habits, and you're a product of your most consistent mental kind of internal dialogue. So
Hmm.
if your internal dialogue is good, then externally you're going to act differently. So
Absolutely.
it's kind of connecting everything. It's a lot. There's a lot to it, but I love learning about it. And I love kind of helping share it with students that aren't necessarily exposed to it a lot. They're not around people that talk about this stuff, or they haven't been introduced to, let's say, different books or podcasts or stuff
Mhm.
yet. And maybe people around them, like even their parents and everything, aren't as motivated as they should be to teach them this stuff. So um, I think it's the most important subject.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Amazing. One other thing I just wanted to highlight, like for like listeners, and just part of what I believe is when it comes to like leaning into discomfort, giving yourself permission to be things at first. Like I love that, you're sharing that with students and teaching them that, because I also believe in order to lean into that discomfort or give ourselves permission to be bad, we need to feel like safe to do so. And I can imagine that you as a teacher support students in feeling that way of like, oh, like this guy's got my back, even if I'm terrible at first. And
Yeah, yeah,
he's just like,
yeah.
you know?
Well, listen, I it is the we are a high level sports school. Like we win quite often in multiple sports every year, and basketball is one of our biggest sports at the school. And basketball is the only sport I've ever been cut from, and I am terrible at shooting. I am so bad, and the amount of students that want to play one on one or watch me shoot, and I'm just throwing up air balls and uh yeah, I think as you get older, you stop caring as much. But if you can kind of demonstrate it or say the right thing, that all of a sudden they realize no one's even going to remember this like tomorrow, whether I missed a like swung at a ball and missed it or whatever else. So it's kind of understanding your students and also creating opportunities so that they can fail a little bit so they get used to it, and then hopefully they're more comfortable to do so. So yeah,
Yeah, totally. I think that's a really great example too of how you're being that leader and demonstrating for them. I bet, they might not even realize the internal thought of like, oh, Mr. Gerylo can laugh at himself. And so therefore, like I feel safe enough to try anyways because it
I
can be
hope so. Yeah,
funny. Yeah. So I can
yeah,
totally
yeah,
see you being
yeah.
that
What
figure for
what
them.
were you the worst at in gym class? What
What
was
was
your
I? Oh
this
my
is an
gosh. It's
insider right here.
okay. Ultimate frisbee.
Okay, well, frisbee's tough. If you never really practice it, like it is a
Frisbee.
specific skill. But you're
Oh.
saying like cross the body, you couldn't throw it to me 10 feet away?
Um, well, no, I could throw it to you 10 feet away, but it just was definitely not my sport.
Okay, all
I'm
right,
trying to
okay.
think of
But you're
another
you're
one.
a decent runner. You could
Uh,
like at least just chase people around and
Let me think on that. If
do
I get
enough.
back to you with
Okay.
one that I'm even worse at, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
I mean, volleyball, everyone grew taller than me, and so I went from like power to libero to the bench. So I don't know.
Yeah, you digress there.
I
Yeah.
did.
I
I
know.
did volleyball.
Eventually the um your physical attributes sometimes have an effect on that. So
But
that was also yeah,
no, go ahead.
that
Sorry.
was that was something like also with sports. I was never, unfortunately my dad's like 6'3", and unfortunately I didn't grow that tall. So he was a national team volleyball player, and he had kind of that height even in high school and university. So I was always that kid that wasn't I was gifted enough to be, I was a decent athlete, but I was never kind of that person that just had the, I was never the strongest and the tallest or the fastest. And so I think I learned how to work to improve those things. And
Mm-hmm.
you see this now as some students are so gifted physically,
Hmm.
and but they never learn a work ethic. And then, you know, they will graduate, and all of a sudden they will actually see the least improvement, and they will kind of, you always have those moments where you run into people you went to high school with or something like that
Hmm.
that were crazy good athletes and wherever else, and
Hmm.
they're barely doing anything now just because it came so easily to them, and they didn't necessarily learn how to work through and improve. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing.
Anyways, I wish I was a little taller, but
I wish I was a little bit
not
taller.
that
I
short.
wish I wasn't bald. I wish I
Yeah,
had a girl
exactly.
who looked good. I would call her.
Keep going,
Sorry,
keep
just
going.
had to include that there. Okay, I was at when we were talking about basketball. I wasn't bad at basketball. I played point guard, and I usually played for teams like a grade above me. So basketball,
Okay.
like I wasn't. I stopped making volleyball teams, but basketball teams, even though I was short, I was fast. So
Yeah.
I made those teams.
Hey, respect. I'll respect that.
Okay. I want to chat with you a little bit about values. When I
Hmm.
think about, like living life as ceremony, even like mindfulness, presence, intention, even what we were talking about earlier, like making your bed every day, those kinds of things. I think that to live life as ceremony, we have to embody values like gratitude, respect, commitment, discipline, and humility, and so much more. So, kind of contrasting that to being an athlete, I'm curious what you think of those values, and also just what are some of your personal values that you embody.
I mean, you listed some pretty big words there in terms of like just if you if you have all of those, I feel like as a person you are at peace. And whatever peace means to you, it's kind of if you're in your element and you're doing well, I also feel like you can be your best self. And I think that is like the best expression. Whatever gets you there, whether you're an artist or an athlete or anything. Um, I think you can get to that point. Do you understand the concept of like flow state?
Mhm.
You so one of the
But
first
tell
books I
us,
ever
tell listeners,
picked
tell
up,
listeners.
yeah, one of the first books I ever picked up in terms of like self-development book or just kind of like human improvement was kind of as a book called Rise of the Superman, and it was about athletes finding um, the opportunities to get into flow state and how different it is that the concept of flow state is kind of you're making the most natural decisions without any kind of like negative thought, logical thought to it. You are just firing on all cylinders without any kind of hesitation. And you don't feel as much of, like, let's say when you're an athlete, you don't feel as much of the discomfort when you're in it and or fear or anything like that. So I think people can get in flow state even like when they're studying or when they're reading or when you're out running. Sometimes you have a moment where 2 miles goes by and you're kind of like, where'd that go, right? Like I was just enjoying it and I was in I was very present, but I wasn't I was also not overthinking. Like I was just kind of there. So I really love getting in that state. And it's funny when sometimes you have to go through something and then someone talks about it later on that you can relate back to it. Um, and I listen to a lot of podcasts that at least when I listen to people speak about multiple different things, it all can relate back to like athletics or you as a person and whatever stage you're in. So I love that. I love kind of finding that presence and learning like that. And it's just a way for me to reflect.
Mhm.
Give me one of the other
Well, I
discipline.
just want to ask you a
Discipline.
quick question about flow
Yeah.
state,
Okay.
because
Okay.
you named some great examples that can help bring people into a flow state. What works for you? Or
I I find that flow state works if you get into your element and it's been like let's say at least 15 minutes and you have done kind of everything and then externally I find if your world is pretty good externally and you don't have like a thought about work or you have a thought about anything, it's easier to get into it. And then I just think it's really like doing what you love and just spending time in it
Mhm.
without distraction, without anything kind of coming and going from it. And but then once you're in it, a lot of that stuff, it's like you're wearing horse blinders, right?
Mhm.
You're very very much in whatever you're doing. So
Totally.
it's weird because they talk about how there's no formula to actually perfectly get into it, right?
Yes.
But everyone has experienced it at some point.
Mhm.
Um, it's just it's like constantly going towards things that you enjoy, that challenges you, that you have to focus through, and
Mhm.
I think it just takes time and just sometimes doing things over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that you said there is no one thing that brings people there, because I believe the same is true about ceremony. I think people have a perception of what exactly they think ceremony is, when in reality ceremony is this bridge of like that brings us into a state of presence and connection. And so there are many different things that can be ceremony for people, or many different things that bring people into flow state. So yeah, that was just my
right.
reflection listening to you. Okay, but rather than listing the values I named, and
Hmm.
I'll share them again if you want me to, but do you have like top three values?
In terms of like for myself that I
Yeah,
value,
yeah.
uh, I think you can always control like your effort and your attitude. So, I mean, I really appreciate like the philosophy of like being stoic or being having like being in control of what you're in control of and then letting go of what's out of your control. And if you react to what's out of your control, then you've lost control yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just keeping in a good state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, as a teacher and things coming and going, or being an athlete that always has to fit in training, things happen in life. Like you can't. It's never perfect, and there's always variables. So I think it is having flexibility and just effort and attitude. Um, in terms of other values, obviously discipline is very important, but I think like willpower and discipline are great, but if you create systems, then you don't have to have so much mental discipline. So I think I value in terms of like I think I really value stability and habits and kind of setting yourself up for success
Mm-hmm.
instead of just trying to battle your way through every day
Mm-hmm.
without um, creating a system to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I actually think, you know, when you are doing things you love and you're enjoying them and you're improving, and let's say you're in flow state or you're around like-minded people, I feel like more opportunity comes to me if I am the person that is doing the things that I genuinely like love to do and am seeing improvement too. So I just look back, and anytime I've had new opportunities or new things happen within certain categories of my life, it's always been when I've been enjoying myself and being open to opportunities and just feeling my best self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
The way in which you talk about, control or letting go of what's not within your control, I think you're speaking to like a very I don't think there is any more or any less spiritual, but I think you're speaking to a very like spiritual lesson around like non-attachment because it is within that attachment piece that we, want to control everything. And when we can let go or practice non-attachment to certain things, we live with a lot more peace. So yeah, that was one of my reflections. Okay, can I share with you a reflection I had when you were speaking?
for sure. Yeah.
Okay, you're talking and I'm like, yeah, my mind's like, oh, and I just thought of something. So when you talk about like not needing to rely on mental discipline as much,
Hmm.
I had like an epiphany moment because the way in which you described creating systems and strategies and stability, I thought of two other values, and they are honesty and creativity. So the essence of creativity is solving a problem. And then I also think when it comes to honesty, relating it back to even training and things like that, we have to be honest. We have to be honest with ourselves about what we physically, mentally, emotionally have the capacity for within our schedules. And I think that, to me, what you're describing is setting up systems so that you don't need to rely on discipline. But if we allow honesty and creativity to create systems for us, then we're leaning into those values over discipline to accomplish our goal.
Yes. And creativity comes from being like not having a ton of distractions around you or whatever else. Like I always find I'm my most creative self when I am driving thinking about something with music or out for a run or something that is kind of taking me back away from something, or when I change things up and go for a walk or something like that. So it's
Mhm.
almost removing yourself from other other stimulation, and then
Mhm.
I find that create I value creativity a lot. So um, it's something I really in terms of just like every part of my life. So yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you. Yeah,
Yeah. I actually think athletes and creativity, there's such like an overlap there, or to hear you say how much you value creativity, like doesn't surprise me. I think athletes are creative people, or we're even tapping into like similar essence. Um, yeah. Anyways, okay, I want to talk to you about another, I don't know if this is a value, but I want to talk to you about sacrifice.
Hmm. Well, I feel with like with social media especially,
Yeah.
you do not really under like you do not it doesn't bring you into understanding what people have sacrificed and what even that moment was for people or different things. So um yes, I sacrifice a lot. Even getting into like we're talking about like athletics and stuff like that. So when I got into this competitively, I see doing this for let's say 10 years. And like I said, it's changed and the pinnacle of the sport has come and gone. And I'm still getting into different ways to challenge myself, but it's less of a focus now. Um, but in terms of discipline, um, I think and sacrifice, you don't really see the little things you do, but
Hmm.
you realize, and this is something sometimes don't try to explain to people, but there's a difference of doing a workout or making time for fitness and making time for fitness so that you can show up and win something. Because everyone else at the top is doing the little things and they are sacrificing, let's say, going out for a drink with their friends on a Friday or not waking up early, hitting the snooze button and different things like that. And you even sacrifice, like you sacrifice a lot of time, but it's time you want to put in.
Hmm.
So I don't say sacrifice is like a negative thing.
Hmm.
It is just, it is other things definitely take a hit if you're not focused on making time for them other ways.
Hmm.
Um, so it, I like sacrificing time for these things and really like if you're not, at least I'm doing something that I enjoy and that I care about and stuff. So it doesn't feel like I'm uh, sacrificing that. But
Hmm.
yeah, like the people don't realize how you feel like, let's say after a race or after a training session. Like for me to be mentally well for my job,
Hmm.
I have to kind of watch my energy levels in terms of, I've had days where, and I understand it a lot more now, but at the start, you'd come into work and you'd be just crushing coffees and you'd be exhausted and mentally you would lose it on a student because you just didn't have the mental resiliency that day because you
Hmm.
did a hard training session or you sacrifice time with some of your friends and all of a sudden 5 years later you're still working on this and they don't really talk to you as much anymore or they don't think you want to do the same things. So it's different, but it's good to be around people that understand it, so you feel
Yeah.
like if you are sacrificing time towards something you care about, you understand, like you're not beating yourself up for it.
Hmm.
So yeah, there's always like misunderstandings, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What have been some of the most challenging sacrifices you've made to reach the levels of success you have today?
I mean, I definitely would have sacrificed, let's say, like what society would tell you what the next stages of your life would be, maybe. Like in general, if you just
Mhm.
looked at time frame and my age and I'm not someone that doesn't want a family at all, but when you're racing and traveling and focused on that, you're less focused on, let's say, settling down, buying a house, whatever else. So um I think I've sacrificed like that kind of ideal timeline that society tells us.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I've definitely, although now I think people understand things a little more in terms of like drinking and different things like that, and a lot more people are valuing just being social in different ways. Um, so which is great, which is ideally, you want to get things out of human connection and value community and stuff like that. And but sometimes you're sacrificing time with people and
Mhm.
building connections because you have to fit in training and you
Mhm.
have to do that. But aside from that, I mean, I wouldn't put that much other than just time, right? It
Mhm.
it, it really is, but I'm not hurting anyone by sacrificing some extra time. I still make time for the things I
That matters.
like. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and because it's not like, let's say, something that is, especially now, like it's not something that I am doing like professionally and stuff like that. It's a
Mhm.
much easier to move things around and value making time for everything else too. So
Mhm.
sometimes I sacrifice training. Sometimes I'm just sacrificing that side of it because I value everything else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think our values also shift as we grow older and as we age.
Yeah.
And you know what, yeah, exactly. Therefore, our values change, therefore our sacrifices change. So thanks for touching on, now sometimes you're sacrificing training on the other end of it because there might be something that value a bit more at this moment in time and want to put a bit of energy or effort into that. So I think that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much time are you sacrificing training for your half marathon?
My half marathon, I did. I sacrificed a lot of time this summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gave
Yeah.
it a go.
And then and then when it's done, then you're making time for other things. It's just kind of a balance of,
Hmm.
you think of whatever those graphs are that have, you know, like a pentagon kind of thing, and there's
Yeah,
more filled in towards certain corners of your
yeah.
life, and it kind of
Change.
changes. And yeah, but you only have a certain amount you can give. So yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, I wanted to ask you, what is something people might not know about you based on what they see on social media?
Well, I think like I started my social media account basically as an athlete. So I just kept it like that because initially it was like, if people want to follow along with this journey and with my results and what I'm doing for training, then they'll follow this, and if not, they'll kind of step away from it. So I think when people see that, they think, yeah, I'm just training and racing, and that's it. But people definitely don't see the side of me that is teaching, is like making time for that. They don't see me coaching all year, whether it's volleyball or track and field and running teams like that, and making time for that. I don't put a lot of my family stuff on there. I don't put a lot of my like going up to my cabin and everything
Mhm.
like that. So I think there is obviously I make time for fitness and racing, and that's up there. And so there will always be things to share for that. But yeah, it's just part of my life. It's not everything that I do, but it definitely is something that is probably going to be in my life at some point, in some context.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I appreciate the reminder that social media isn't people's entire lives. And just, and you and I know each other outside of this podcast episode as well. And
right.
so I know some of those areas of life that mean a lot to you, that you really value, that are just as important to you as training or as racing, but it's just not necessarily shown in a little square on social media, and that's perfectly fine.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
cool. Beyond like sports or physical movement, what are some other ways you like to connect with yourself? You mentioned your cabin, so I'm kind of curious about that.
Yes. I mean, the cabin's always been great. We didn't have a TV there, anything, or don't. So I think I grew up there understanding that it was just me and the people I was with. So connecting really well with the people there, and kind of connecting with nature and doing, whether it was going out for canoe trips, or kind of brings you back into naturally just what you feel good doing.
Mhm.
Um, how else do I connect? I mean, I love, like I said, connecting, like a long drive with podcasts or music. I've always found music really sits well with me. People always that know me well know that I listen to music all the time, and I have tons of different playlists for different things. Like I'm not very one track in terms of like genre or anything like that. So I think I really like connect well with music. It puts me in like a good state, and I can reflect and think while listening to it, or different things like that, or podcasts. And then I've started journaling, but I think I was always hesitant because no journal fit well with me. You put up like journal prompts and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and those are great. And I wanted to find like a daily journal. So
Yeah.
eventually I just looked at about 10 different ones and stole little fill out forms from each of them and then built my own. So it's still in the creating factor right now, but I think I have a better idea of kind of how I want to do that. And I'm enjoying it. I do it in the morning, just kind of set a few intentions, set a few kind of what are the main priorities for the day, go through some gratefulness things, and try to have one discipline and or kind of lifestyle control that I'm more aware of for the day. So I set like little 30-day challenges. So sometimes it's the same one, which I like, compounding multiple days
Yeah.
and bringing awareness to it. Um, so those are little things that I'm trying to do. And then I don't know, have you ever heard of red light therapy?
Yes, obviously.
I sit in front of like a red light panel every night, and it gives me like sometimes I'll listen to like a podcast
Yeah.
or like a YouTube video or something, or some kind of certain level music. You must know the correct term for it,
Like
but
the
it's
frequency for your brainwave state?
frequency. Yes, yes, yeah. So you just put on like a certain frequency that will
Mhm.
put you in whatever state that I kind of want to go to bed at, based on how my day went, or
Mhm.
how motivated I am, or different things. So that would be a way that I'm kind of spending that, I wouldn't say meditative state, but I would say it's a very much just like calm breathing, eyes closed kind of thing, and just listening. So I think those are ways I connect. And then although people will say running is like like depending on how you view running, I always find that even though it is like exerting and everything like that, I do find I'm like very connected when I'm running and enjoying it,
Mhm.
or I get into a point of it at some point in my runs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So the journaling, did you do it this morning?
I did. This is the problem though. I do it and then I'm like, I can't always remember exactly. You're going to ask me what I wrote?
I am gonna ask you what you wrote.
Uh,
If you want to share on the podcast, like even if you
I,
remember your intention or what you're grateful for.
okay. So my intention I'm working at right now is based off a challenge. So I'm trying to create more engaging, quick conversations with people. So I pass, you know, hundreds and hundreds of students a day. I pass colleagues in the hall, and instead of just saying hi, how's it going, or those very much like just kind of robotic answers, trying to make things a little more engaging and or create a little bit more connection or a better thing. So um, that was my intention today, is just creating. So I just look for more opportunities to like poke fun at someone that I know something about them, or ask them something specific based on what I know about them, or hype someone up a little bit as they walk by me instead of just say nothing. So it's kind of a fun thing to do when you bring awareness to it and you build momentum throughout the day. Even though you try to do it once, you want to do it more often.
Yeah.
And then one of my priorities was do this podcast. So
Yeah,
I'm
thank
checking
you
that
for
one off the, yeah,
for making the time for it. I love that intention, and I think ceremony is about presence and connection. And to hear that your intention is to create more meaningful and engaging quick conversation is to literally bring more presence and connection to this world and through relationships, which I think we need more of. So, yeah,
for
I'm
sure.
taking that away for sure. I'm sure lots of listeners are as well. I'm glad I asked you that question
I
of
hope
what
so.
was your
I hope
intention
people are
today.
taking a little bit out of this. I'm trying to relate things back to, I'm sure people are the same way when they're listening to a conversation. They're just bringing it back to how they're relating it to their own situations, hopefully. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Okay, what is next for you with life, but also like with racing? Because I know we chatted
Hmm.
about it at the beginning, and your journey over the past decade. Where are you going from here?
So, in terms of Spartan Race and everything, they kind of have gone ways with the elite side of it. They still have like competitive waves and everything, but there's not as much money in the sport. They definitely don't have as much support for the pro athletes and or like a Canadian team. So uh, I'm not as motivated to go to those, not because of that, but it doesn't draw out the same competition, and I don't really get as much out of a race that you just can easily win, let's say,
Mhm.
because the best athletes you used to compete against aren't really showing up anymore. So now I'm kind of just getting into trail running and mountain running, which is great. It's fun. Um, it's tough watching like very good runners run and not having like to do any kind of obstacle, and they're just better runners than me, and kind of just realizing that I'm unless something really goes wrong, fitness is fitness at that point.
Yeah.
But I'm doing I've gone to Canadian Mountain and Trail Championships
Mhm.
for like previous years, so I'm going to that again in Quebec and doing the 50-kilometer race out there. So I'm kind of getting into the longer ultra running, but not those crazy like 100 milers and stuff like that, but kind of that good balance of distance to still speed racing. So less racing, but a few big races, and then just um, enjoying the training around it, and not
Mhm.
because that's another thing people don't realize is it looks fun to jump into a race every other weekend, but
Mhm.
it's pretty exhausting, and it's hard to get in some quality training when you're just kind of traveling, coming home, recovering, traveling, racing. It's not really sustainable. So this is a lot easier mentally too. So
Mhm.
yeah, plus when you go to these races, no one knows who you are. So it's nice to kind of show up and not have any pressure on yourself.
Mhm.
And as the race kind of unfolds, you just kind of go with it. And uh, I get a lot more out of these races, even not winning, and just
Mhm.
trying to find my limit of this like new kind of challenge.
Incredible. And how can listeners support you in your, yeah.
I mean, I think I don't know. Just get involved in the community if you're curious about it. I mean, I can't say enough about trails. Find a way to get outside. Find a way to find um, something you enjoy outdoors, whether it's skiing, biking,
Mhm.
hiking, whatever. But I think the more people that enjoy the outdoors, the more it helps me not feel like I'm on a lone island here. Like, and this might be. I'm not saying people don't enjoy the outdoors. Most people have found it, but it is. I still realize, even in places like where you live and stuff like that, people still find it hard to make time for it
Mhm.
around everything else with their lives and stuff like that. So um, I don't know if that's really supporting me, but I think it's
No,
just
I
like
love it. It's
helping
like
everyone
supporting
else out.
themselves and supporting the whole world.
Yeah.
No, it's
I
great.
mean, hey, yeah, if you're there, cheer me on. That always helps. I'm always the person that's like loves chatting with the volunteers coming through or talking to the people I'm racing with as best I can.
Mhm.
Sometimes you're breathing pretty heavy and you're not able to have a full conversation, but yeah, I always enjoy it.
Okay. And I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Do you train people?
I do.
Oh, you do?
I
Okay.
used to run I used to run like a fitness class,
Yes.
which was great for a while, and that was one of my favorite things to create and bring people together. But I do run training with people online. I found it
Okay.
very difficult to train people with like overall training in terms of like weight training and stuff like that, unless it was in person. But yeah, that kind of came to me, and I have moments where I'm training. I only train up to 3 clients at a time because then I can really think about their own situations and not just throw out generic training plans and stuff like that. But yeah, I have done that, and I feel like I'll say I'll always train people if they're curious about it and it's the right fit.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay. So if someone were listening to this podcast and they're like, I want Mik Gerylo to train me, they can reach out to you.
for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much for making time for this podcast and
Of
for just
course, it was fun.
making time to chat today. I really appreciate it. And I think, yeah, there are so many things I even want to reflect on based on what you shared today. And yeah, in my opinion, you shared so much wisdom with us. So thank you very, very much for being here, Mick.
I appreciate it. Thanks for listening, everybody.